friends. My name is Anand Venkateshan. I'm the founder and mentor of this platform called Mentors Capital. Well, I'm glad to say that we offer one of the best test series going around for your CLAT test preparation. Our tests have been curated by experts who've taken a very close look at the new pattern of CLAT and aim to give you as much practice on a large variety of problem types, whether it's in the quant section or legal aptitude or even reading comprehension or reasoning. All right, in today's session, I'm going to discuss the second sample paper released, with CLAT 2023. Let's get started with the session right away. The idea here is that I'm going to discuss the right approach, to tackle the data interpretation section here. So the first thing I would request all of you is to pause this video and make sure that you've attempted, the 3 sets that are part of the CLAT 2023 sample paper 2. Once you've done that, come back, watch this video and see if your approach and answers are indeed correct or not. So the first thing that I would suggest you think about is, are you choosing the right set? I think, a big challenge for any CLAT aspirant is that, given the 10-15 minutes that you have in allocated for the data interpretation section, and I don't think most of you are going to give more than 15 minutes. My hunch is actually that if you're good at maths, then you probably should consider giving 15 minutes or a little more. But if you don't believe math or quant to be your strength, then just give yourself somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes for this section, right? And in that case, I think choosing the right set to attempt becomes a very big priority for you, right? Now, let's talk about this particular DI section, right? There are 3 sets in the paper. And the first thing that you should do is look at, what are these sets about? What topics do they belong to? And you'll notice that the first set is based on a linear equation problem. It involves statements and percentages given to you, right? The second, set is based on simple arithmetic, right? It's a problem based on a table, but very simple data. Percentages and ratios are involved. And the third set is based on, areas, right? So basic mensuration on 2-dimensional figures. Most of these figures are actually rectangles, right? So that's a general sense you get from a quick read of, the set itself, the given information in the set, and understanding what topic they come from, right? The next thing you do is try to understand, is this set difficult? And this should be actually a combination of what topic it comes from and what are the, difficulty level of the questions. And so if you look at the first set from data interpretation, the problem itself is not very hard. It's based on, linear equations, right? You can sense that it's based on statements which can then be converted into equations. And while there are many conditions given to you, the construction of linear equations is not very hard. But what does challenge you in this set is actually the problems. And in fact, 2 things stand out. Number one, there are very few values, but many more variables, right, in the set itself. And number 2, even if you do solve it, if you take a look at the options very quickly, you'll notice that the options look a lot scarier, right? They're not the usual solutions that you get from linear equations. They contain decimals in the denominator and all sorts of complicated expressions, right? So the first assessment tells me that the first set might be easy, right? Maybe easy to medium, but the questions are hard, right? What about the second set? Well, it's based on a simple data table, very simple table, not very complicated, not too much of information given to you. And also what's apparent is that the questions are pretty straightforward, right? They're based on simple ratio and percentage calculation. So this set definitely looks very easy, definitely worth attempting in the exam. And then the third set, which is based on mensuration, right? And if you take a closer look at it, they're all rectangles. And the problem talks about, tiling the areas and the paths. So, it's again a use of area, and area of a rectangle is length into breadth, and some basic calculations based on that. Well, use of common sense would mean that this problem is not that hard, at least not as hard as the first set, right? So if you consider difficulty level, I'd say that the first set is probably going to be medium to hard difficulty, right? The second set is definitely the easiest set, and the third set, even though I classify it as easy, it's probably a little hard than the second one, right? So in terms of attempting, the first attempt you should do is of set number 2. This should be followed by set number 3, and if you have any time left, well, you could either attempt set number 1 or skip it entirely and go back to some other section, right? So that's the attempting strategy. And this is the way that I'm going to discuss this paper as well with you. We're going to start with the second set in the exam, right? So the paper gives you this information in the second set, which question number 26 says that there is a table, and this table gives you the results of 5 randomly selected participants. They're named in the table, and their performance in the archery event, in women's individual archery event at the 2012 Olympic Games, right? And you're given their scores in the first half, second half, the number of shots they got in the tens ring, as well as the inner ring, also called the X ring, right? So we've got this information, and you're also told that each participant takes a total of 72 arrows, right? Takes a total of 72 shots basically, and a shot in the tens ring gives you an award of 10 points, right? So this is the information we already know, right? And now the first question from the set is asking us about which players scored the highest and the lowest total marks, right? And it also explains this quite nicely, saying sum up the first half and the second half scores and compare the total scores of all players, and tell us which player scored the maximum and which scored the least score, right? And so you can do this for all the players. The first player here is Deepika Kumari. Her total is equal to 327 plus 335, that's 662. Second player being Khatuna Lorik, right? And her total comes to 669. That of Kibo Bay is equal to 671, right? And Senia Purova, right, has scored a total of 659. And finally, Lin scored 667, right? And the moment you total it, it's quite easy to see that the highest score was that of Senia, and sorry, the highest score is that of Ki Obe, and the lowest score is that of Senia Perova, right? And so you want to look at the option which gives you these two persons, names these two persons, Ki and Senia. And so that's option C, which is the correct answer for this particular question. And you can see that this is a very simple question. All right, moving on to question number 2 from the same set. 26.2 says, how many archers had a higher second half score as compared to their first half score? And you can quickly check it out, right? Deepika Kumari, second half score was 335, which is indeed greater than her first half score. That of Khatuna is also greater in the second half, right? If you look at Kipo Bay, then her first half score is actually greater. For Senia Perova, again, you can see second half score is greater. And for Lin, the first half score is greater, right? So how many of them had a second half score greater than the first? Well, you can see that there are 3 of them, and then their names are indeed Deepika, Khatuna, and Senia, right? And once you know that these are the 3 players, you simply mark option P for this. So question number 3 from the same set, 26.3 says, what percentage of Deepika Kumari's total score was from arrows landing in the 10 ring? And quickly sort of count what is Deepika Kumari's total score. That's 327 plus 335 or 662, right? So this is her total score. How many of her shots landed in the tens ring? Well, that's 25 of them. And we are also told that each arrow landing in the tens ring gets you 10 points, right? So basically, the total number of points scored by arrows in the tens ring would be 25 times 10. That's 250. So what percentage of her total score came from these 10 ring shots? Well, you simply do a percentage that is 250 upon 662 into 100, right? And you can see that I've also helped you sort of calculate or at least approximate your answer. And so if you write it as 25 into 1000 upon 662, right? Remember, 66.7% is 2/3, right? So basically, the fraction 66.7 upon 100, we know should be 2/3. And this is quite close an approximation to that inverse of that. So while what I'll do is I'll quickly write this as into 3 by 2, and so that's 75 by 2, which becomes 37.5. So I know that my answer is going to be very close to 37.5, and a very close answer is option B, which is what you should be marking for this question. Question number 4 says, what is the ratio of the total number of arrows landing in the X ring to the total number of arrows shot? Now let's count the total number of arrows in the X ring, right? 8 plus 4 plus 13 plus 7 plus 8 brings a total to 40. So you have 40 total shots in the X ring. But total number of shots, we know that, 72 shots are taken, 72 arrows are shot by each participant. So the total number of shots will be 72 times 5. That's a total of 360 shots, right? So what is the ratio? Well, ratio should be 40 is to 3600 or 1 is to 9. That is option A from the given choices. The last question in the set, question 26.5 says, what percentage of arrows shot by Khatuna Lorik in the tens ring landed in the X ring, right? So what percentage of the arrows that Khatuna shot in the tens ring, we know that's 32 in number, right? So she shot 32 arrows in the tens ring. What percentage of these arrows landed in the X ring? And so if you count the number of arrows in the X ring, we know that's 4, right? So 4 out of 32 landed in the X ring. So the required percentage should be 4 by 32 into 100, or 1/8 of 100, which is indeed 12.5%. Hence, mark option D for this particular question. All right, so this, we can see that, this is the reason why this set is actually called an easy one. And I hope you did find the question easy as well. Before we move ahead, I think the important thing with, getting an easy set like this is that you need to go through a lot of practice to improve your speed, right? On just basic problems involving percentages, ratios, and simple data sets. The skill you need is to be able to calculate faster, is to be able to get to the answer as fast as possible. And these things are actually indexed to practice, right? And if you, go through our test series, besides the full length mock tests, our students are also given intensive practice on data interpretation. There's almost 10 online, exercises that you can practice with 2 to 3 sets each at the very least. And this will go a long way in improving your, speed and accuracy on DI, right? So do check out the link in the description, and reach out to us for any sort of help that you need to support your CLAT aspirations. Next up, we're going to discuss question number 27, which is, as you can see, a problem based on mensuration, right? The problem basically says that there are 2 areas, and each area has a path as well as multiple sections. And we're told that each section has a length of X and a breadth of Y, right? So you sort of visualize this. Mensuration problems are actually quite a bit about visualizing. So imagine that there is a rectangle X by Y, X feet by Y feet. And the problem basically says that the layout of each area is then described, right? Besides the section, you also have a path which, can match the area of the path, the area's dimensions, but will have a fixed width of Z, right? And so what are we given about the 2 areas? The first area has 3 sections and a path along the vertical edge, right? And this is important. It has 3 sections along the vertical edge and a path along the vertical edge in a manner that the vertical side of the area is 3 times the length of a section, right? So basically, you take 3 sections and you stack them up along their length, and if you make them vertical, and so that will be the vertical side of the given section. And the path runs along the vertical edge, so you can replicate a path to its sides, right? And so the horizontal side of the section of the area is equal to breadth of a section. And you can see, if you take the path away, the horizontal width of the area is now equal to the width of the section, right, which is equal to Y. So this is what the first area is described as. The second area, it says, has 4 sections, a path along the horizontal edge, and the horizontal side now equals 4 times the length of each section, right? And so again, you can imagine that there is there are 4 sections stacked side by side, 4 rectangles arranged side by side. and then a path that runs on top of all of them. And this is the area described as the second one, right? And what we are also told is that the value of x, y, and z is known. X is 6 feet, y is 5 feet, and z is equal to 1 foot, right? So you know the dimensions, and so you can directly, obviously translate that to the two areas. We know that the first area has 3 lengths along the vertical edge, so that becomes 3x, and then the width will be, for the area it will just be y, but including the path it should be y plus z, right? And ditto for the second area, you have the length of the path of the area as 4 times the length x, right? 4 times the length of each section, which is x. So 4x, and then the width is equal to y if you ignore the path, right? So that's what we know about the two areas. Let's try to answer some questions now. The first question here says, what is the ratio of the area of the paths to area of all sections, right? So you basically want area of the two paths that are given in the two sections, the two areas, and the area of all the sections that make up. Now, a very simple thing you could do is you know that each of these sections are identical area, right? So what you could directly do is 7 times the area of any one section will be the area of all the 7 sections put together, right? Alternatively, you can treat them as two different rectangles and calculate their individual areas. So what we'll do is first calculate the area of the path, because both of them are straightforward rectangle. The first path has a length of 3x, which is 18, and the breadth is z, which is 1. So 18 times 1 becomes its area. And the second path has 4 lengths, so 4 times 6 is 24 along the length, and the width will be equal to the width of the tile, of the area of the section, sorry. And so that's y, right? So 3x by y, or basically 18 by 6, 18 by 5, and 24 by 5, right? So those are the two areas, right? And so if you quickly add the paths together, 18 into 1 and 24 into 1 will be the area of the paths, and area of the sections themselves will be 7 times the area of any one section. That's 7 times 30, or 210 square feet. So basically the total area of all the sections is 210. Area of all paths is 42. What is the ratio was the question? And so the ratio will directly be 42 is to 210, which is indeed equal to 1 is to 5. And hence the correct answer to this question is option B. Question number 2 from this set says that the paths must be tiled one day by 2 workers. And if a working day has 7 hours, how much overtime will be payable, right? Assume that the paths are tiled in exactly 1 day. So basically the task is to lay tiles, right? And so the first question you should ask is how many tiles are there, right? And so the tiles are laid on the path. Very clearly said that the tiles are laid only on the path. So what is the area of the path that we have? Well, we know that that's from the previous question, we know that's 42 square feet. If you were to divide this area that needs to be tiled by the area of any one tile, that would give you the number of tiles needed. And so if you quickly do that calculation, but remember, when doing this calculation, since the dimensions of the tile are given in inches and not in feet, you will have to convert either inches into foot or foot into inches. And you can see that what I've done is that I've converted the dimensions into inches, right? So 42 square feet means 42 feet by 1 feet, right? So that can be written as 42 times 12 feet, 12 inches multiplied by 12 inches for the breadth, right? So since it's square of feet, it will become square of inch, right? So 12 into 12 divided by area of a tile. We already know this in inches, 8 into 4, 32, right? And so you quickly do this calculation and you get 189 tiles are needed, right? But we are also given another constraint, which is that there are only 2 workers that you have and they can only work for a day, right? So since each worker ends up working for 7 hours a day, right? And you'll use that. But for now, you'll say that 2 workers, each worker can finish 12 tiles per hour, right? And so since we have 2 workers working on our job, we can finish 24 tiles for every hour. And we know that the total hours available to us in this question are 7. So that in regular time, the number of tiles will get finished will be 24 times 7. That's 168. So we know that we haven't completed the task, right? So they need to be overwork. How many tiles do we need to lay in overtime? Well, since 168 have already been laid and 189 are required, you subtract. Right? You say 189 minus 168 is 21 tiles. And so since you have 21 tiles, the number of hours needed will be 21 divided by 24, right? Because you can make 24 tiles in 1 hour. But obviously, this tells you it won't take an hour, right? So it's going to be slightly less than 1 hour. So overtime will then be paid for 1 hour for both the workers. And we're also told that overtime is paid at the rate of 30 rupees for half an hour or 200 rupees per an hour. So 200 each will be given to the two workers, and that means that the total money paid would indeed be equal to 400 rupees. That's option C from the given choices. Question number 3 is a continuation of the previous one. What is the total cost of tiles and labor for tiling the path? We've already calculated that the area of the path was 42 square foot, and this would require 89 tiles, 189 tiles in order to completely cover that area, right? And so the total cost will be cost of purchasing these many tiles. Remember, the question says you can only purchase in complete integer value of dozens, right? And so since you need to buy only in dozens, you'll say this will not be equal to 15 dozens, right? 15 dozens comes to 15 times 12 is 180. So since this exceeds 15 dozens, you will have to buy 16 dozens. So your cost becomes 16 times the price of a dozen, which we know is 240. So 16 times 240, that's 3,840, which is the cost of all the tiles. The next question is, what about labor cost? Now, we've already calculated overtime as 400. What about the actual labor? Where since you're paying 700 rupees per hour per worker, we have two workers. So that becomes 1,400 per hour. And the number of hours worked, would be 7. So 200 times 7, that means that that would be the regular, regular cost of labor, and an additional overtime is paid, which we know is 400. So once you add all of this, you get the total cost of purchasing tiles is 5,640 rupees. That's option number A from the given choices. Question number 4 says cost per square foot of the area is 300, and this is actually, asking us to find, what happens if you're trying to buy and sell it, right? So the cost per square foot is the purchasing value. So the cost price is given to us as 300 per square foot. And so what area should we use? We should consider the entire area, paths and the sections included. So the first thing, we'll find area of all sections. We know that's 18 by 5 and 24 by 5. We know that the sections have an area of 210. We also know that the paths have an area of 42. So the total area becomes 252. And since you can buy it at the price of 300 per square foot, the cost of buying would be 252 times 300. That's 75,600. Right? Okay. Now that we have this, we move on to the total expenditure, right? Because the problem says that besides, obviously the total expenditure will include cost of buying the tile as well as the labor cost, used in producing, in finalizing the product. So total cost becomes, we're told that 25,200 are the expenses incurred for other activities on the area, like tilling the path, etc. So that comes out to 25,200, and hence the total expenditure becomes 75,600 plus 25,200, or 1,08,000 rupees, right? So this much money is what has already been spent, and so in order to make a 20% profit, the profit should be 20% of this value, 1,80,000, which we know is approximately 20,000. So 1,08,800 became 1,20,900, right? So there's some sort of a mismatch that happens there. But the real mismatch happens when you consider the path, the selling price per square foot. Because remember, paths cannot be sold, and so the total area that you should divide this by will be actually equal to area of just the sections, right, which we've already calculated as 210 over here, right? And so you simply use that in this problem, divide 221,760 by 210, and you get the answer as an exact 1,056 rupees per square foot, right? And so you should mark option. The last problem in the set, this question says that all sections are sold and the interest is deposited, right? The amount is deposited. First of all sections are sold. So basically, we'll get a price of 1,056 rupees per square foot, and this is then multiplied with 210. And from the previous question, we actually know this value. We know that it's that's 221,760. Right? That's the total cost of buying, right? And this much money is then deposited at the rate of 10% simple interest. And so what would be the amount? So first question is, what is the principal? How much money does this person receive on selling the property, right? So we already know from the previous question that the total money spent is 2,21,760, right? And so on this, he or she intends to make a profit, right? And so, sorry, in this one, it's not about profit, it's actually about interest, to earn interest. So if this money is then deposited in a bank, we get 10% every year. So in total, you'll get 50% as the interest, right? And it's simple, you can do that, basic arithmetic. 50% is half, and that becomes 110,880. And so the question is saying, what is the amount received after 5 years? Right? And so the amount will be an addition of the interest to the principal, right? And so if you do that, if you total them together, it becomes 332,640, right? And that's actually option number A from the given choices. So we now come to problem number 3, set number 3, actually from the mock CLAT, sample paper for 2023. This is paper number 2. And this question says that Swami rented a shop for a fixed amount, and then goes on to give us a little more detail. And this, straight up should occur to you as a problem on linear equations, right? And so that's the first instinct, and we should hold on to that. And so let's try and construct the linear equation, for each sentence. The first statement, Swami rents a shop for a fixed amount, and this fixed amount works for a minimum of 20 hours, and then he pays 600 per hour, for any extra hours that he uses the shop for. Right? So 600 per hour as extra, which basically means that the equation is rent paid will be fixed rent plus 600 times t minus 20. It's a little dangerous to write this as t minus 20, remember, because if t is less than 20, it will become negative, right? And so it will incur a negative cost. So make sure that even though we are writing it as t minus 20, it cannot be t minus 20. Actually should be only some variable excess hours. But anyway, for now we can represent it as t minus 20. So that's told you, that's given about the rent. The problem also says that he incurs expenses which are equal to half the rent that he pays. So expenses E should be R by 2. We can also flip it around and say that R should be equal to 2 times the expense E. The question also says he decides to sublet the space and earns a profit of 100% of his total expenditure, right? And this expenditure includes the rent paid and other expenses that he has, right? And so what you do is, that profit will be 100% of the total expenditure, that's E plus R, and 100% of something is that itself, isn't it? So you can basically write this as 100% of 2E plus E. Remember, we've already calculated R, we've already designated R as 2E. So if you plug that here in place of R, you get E plus 2E, which basically is equal to 3 times E. All right, so now we know the profit, and if you read on in the question, the problem also says that he pays a tax on the amount he charges. So G% will be paid on the amount he charges, which is indeed equal to 6E and not 3E as shown in the screen right now. So excuse me for that, because remember that the tax will be paid on the money that he charges, right? And he's going to charge profit plus expense, right? And expense itself is 3, right? profit is also 3. So the total money that he charges from letting the flat will be equal to 6E. So G% of that is paid as tax. All right. What are we given in this particular problem? 25.1. It says fixed amount of rent paid by B Swami is 10,000 and the total rent paid was R. Right. So we're given F as 10,000 and we're told that rent paid by him was equal to R. So immediately say R equal to 10,000 plus 600 times the excess hours. And the question asks us how many extra hours, right? So you want the value of the excess hours. So don't need to calculate T. We just need to report T minus 20. So T minus 20 here will be equal to R minus 10,000 divided by 600. And if you split them into two terms, it becomes R by 600 minus 100 by 6. Right? Now, at this point, the idea is to, once you start glancing at the options, you need to sort of figure out which is the correct answer. And one way, and definitely not the only way, is to notice that all of the option choices have decimals, right? It has 0.06, 0.01. So a quick sort of reckoner here is that 1 upon 100 is in fact, what you can write in place of 0.01, right? And hence, since we also see 0.06, that should be equal to 6 by 100, right? And let's see if this helps in the equation that we got. Remember, we got R by 600 minus 100 by 6. So R by 600 can be written as 1 by 100 times R by 6, right? And 1 by 100 obviously is 0.1. And then you can write 100 by 6 as 1 upon 6 by 100, right? So I'm going to write that here. 100 upon 6 can also be written as 1 upon 6 by 100, which is indeed equal to 1 by 0.06. So this basically expression for extra R's becomes equal to 0.01 times R upon 6 minus 1 upon 0.06, right? And if you write it this way, you can see that this exactly matches option C from the choices. And that's what you should mark for this particular question. So the next problem now, question number 2 or 25.2 of this set says that if the total amount inclusive of tax that B Swami charged B S Bhumi, if that is equal to A. So basically A is the total amount charged by Swami, and we know that value, right? We know that he charges as much as his profit, which is 3E, and his total expense, which is also 3E. So we know that he's going to charge a total money which is equal to A, but A will also be equal to 6E, 3E plus 3E, 6E, and then additional tax on it, which let's assume is G%, right? So G% of 6E is added to 6E, and this is the money that he charges, right? So 6A equals this, and all you need to do is now solve it to get the value of G, right? And if you rearrange it, G% is G by 100, which will be equal to A minus 6E whole divided by 6E, which means G by 100 will actually be A upon 6E minus 1, right? And obviously now you need to rewrite this to actually match the given option choices. G here will be 100 times A by 6E, and you can see what, the work that you'll do. You'll write 100 upon 6 as 1 upon 0.06, right? And 100 itself can be written as 1 by 0.01. And so if you do that, you can see that this matches option A, right? Because this term becomes A upon 0.06E, and this term becomes 1 by 0.01. And that's exactly what option D has. Question number 3 says, what is the price that F Bhumi charged for his goods, inclusive of tax? And what we're told is that, well, Bhumi marked his goods 80% more than the cost price. So there's an increase in the price, which is 80%, right? Okay. And then he gave 2 successive discounts of 10% each, which means that the price reduced by 10% and again by 10%. And this all began from, him purchasing it at C, and then markup, and then the 2 discounts, and this will give you the final selling price, right? SP. So what you can immediately do is you can accumulate all of these changes by using, the property of, successive changes. And if you haven't done that, again, I think I would give you a reminder to go through our test series, because there's a lot of practice that you'll get on exactly these kind of, arithmetic operations, successive changes and whatnot. But to put it in a nutshell right now, any increase in percentage terms can be added to 100% to get a multiplier. right? A decrease, you subtract the percentage from 100%, and that becomes the multiplier. Basically, you take that value and multiply with the initial value, which is the base, and that gives you the final value. So here, the final value we have is the selling price, which which is the price that the question asks us, right? So what we can do is we can say, let the marked price is 80% more. So it should be 80% more or 180% of the cost. So that becomes 180 upon 100 C, which is 1.8 times C. Now, since there are two discounts offered, which are 10% each, you say each of them will make it 90% of the previous value, right? So the first change will make the price 90% of the marked price. And then the second change will make it 90% of 90% of the marked price, right? And 90% can be written as 90 by 100 or 0.9. So this basically translates into 0.9 times 0.9 times 1.8 times the cost price, right? So now this is the final selling price. And obviously you need to add tax to it, right? So on the same value, you're adding 18% as tax. He needs to pay 18% as tax, which is the same as saying it increases by 18%, right? So 18% more means 118% of the previous selling price is the final selling price inclusive of tax. So 118% is 118 upon 100 or 1.18, right? So the final expression for the price that S Bhumi charges is 1.18 times 0.9 times 0.9 times 1.8. And you can see that, in order to work this out, you need to accumulate it, right? And the first option has 0.9 cube. And a quick inspection says I have 2.9s and I can extract a 0.9 from the third term by 5 if I write it as 0.9 times 2, right? And so this becomes, 2C into 1.18 is 2.36, and the 0.9s together will become whole to the power 3, and that exactly matches option A. So the correct answer to this problem is indeed option A. Now, question number 4 in the problem says that B. Swami paid his landlord N rupees as rent in a certain month, which was in excess of the actual, rent payable, right? And if the excess amount is expressed as X, then how many hours did B. Swami pay his rent for, right? And so you go back and say, okay, N and the actual rent are different. N is what he pays, R is what he's supposed to pay, and the difference is X, right? And so immediately you can say that, hey, rent is N, excess is X, means actual rent will be N minus X, or you could say N is equal to R plus X, right? Whichever way you're thinking about this, right? But we already have an expression for R, isn't it? So you equate it, right? You equate 10,000 plus 600 times the excess Rs T minus 20 should be equal to N minus X. And since we want the total number of hours, not the excess hours, we'll say the total number of hours T would be equal to, calculated by rearranging the terms here, right? So basically, since we want the value of T, 600 into T comes out, 600 into 20, minus 20 will be minus 12,000. And so 10,000 minus 12,000 becomes minus 2,000. So 600 T minus 2,000 equals N minus X. I hope, this simplification is making sense to you. Now, from this simple linear equation, you need to find the value of T. And so T will be N minus X plus 2,000, or 600 T is equal to this. So T will be N minus X upon 600, which, immediately rules out option C because it has N plus X. All of them have N minus X by 600. The question is, what about the plus, right? And you can see this is 200 by, 2000 by 600, which is like 20 by 6, which is like 10 by 3. And 10 by 3 is actually 3 and 1/3. And so the correct answer here will be option B. The last question from the set says, if S Bhumi invested a certain amount in 1 year, made a profit of 75% in year 1 and a loss of 70% in year 2, overall, did he gain or lose, and what was the percentage, right? And so you can assume, right, this problem is, separate from the given scenario. So you can just start with, let's say I invested Bhumi invested S rupees, or you can even take this value as 100 actually, right? So I'm going to show you the workings with 100. So say money invested was S, profit of 75% and 70% loss in the next year means that it will first increase by 75%, 175%, and then it will reduce by 70%, which means it becomes 70%, right? Now, this problem is actually a little weird because Profit in the second year usually should be calculated on as a percentage of the cost of that year. But since this problem is given to us and we're not given the total cost price, I think you'll have to sort of let go of your rationality and say maybe Bhumi calculates the second year's profit as a percentage of the previous year's selling price, right? And so that's why this would become a case of successive changes, a case of 75% increase in the profit followed by a 70% decrease in year 2, right? So basically 75% increase followed by 70% decrease accumulates to what? 75% increase makes it 175%, 70% decrease makes it 100 minus 70, 30%. And so these can be translated into numbers. 175 by 100 and 30 by 100 become 1.75 and 0.3. So the product becomes 0.525. And since we started with a percentage, divided it by 100 to become a number, the final number you get should be converted into a percentage. You basically multiply it with 100 to convert it into a percentage. That becomes 52.5% of C, right? So the final selling price is 52% and a little more of the cost price. Since the selling price is 50% of the cost, it's less than the cost, we must be selling it at a loss. And so the loss will be the difference from 100% to 52.5%. And that indeed is equal to 47.5. And hence, the correct answer to this question is option C.
We at Mentors Capital have curated the best test series for you. We can confidently claim that our test series is best in the market. So go and see it for yourself. Remember, coaching kahin se bhi. Test series from Mentors Capital.